We are going to begin with the debt ceiling showdown in Washington. President Biden expected to sit down with congressional leaders to talk about the issue as soon as tomorrow.
So this meeting had been scheduled for last Friday, as you might remember, but was postponed as staffers continue to negotiate on the debt limit. President Biden first gathered with the members of the 4 top members of Congress to discuss the nation's borrowing limit. That was last Tuesday, but the meeting ended with absolutely no resolution.
However, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has warned that the U.S. risks defaulting on its debt as soon as June 1st. That is less than 3 weeks from today. So joining us now from Capitol Hill, CBS News Congressional correspondent Nikole Killion. Nikole, I say however because Janet Yellen also said that she thought some progress had been made, if I have that right. Tomorrow, this is the second meeting between the president and congressional leaders. I guess what the Treasury Secretary is saying, that maybe some staffer progress has been made at a lower level?
Well, we know that staff have been discussing, different ideas and proposals over the last couple of days since that meeting that the president had with congressional leaders last week. And so overall, all sides seem to feel that some progress is being made. And that's part of why they postponed that meeting on Friday to this week, because they wanted to give their staff more time to try to hammer out more details. But that being said, when Speaker McCarthy arrived here at the Capitol this morning, he told a small group of reporters that he feels that both sides are still far apart and that, there really needs to be some type of agreement hammered out this week in order to clear both chambers of Congress. So that really is the issue for both congressional leaders and the White House. Time is really ticking here. You have President Biden, who's getting ready to go overseas to Japan and Australia. You have Congress getting ready to recess as soon as this week. So it really doesn't leave much time. And really, we would need to see a lot of substantive progress by tomorrow, but it's unclear if that's where all sides are at this point.
And Nikole, given the state of things, some Senate Democrats have been urging the president to use the 14th Amendment, saying that the 14th Amendment states that the validity of debt shall not be questioned. Others say that this would turn into a constitutional crisis. Where does the president stand, and how likely is he to do such a thing?
Well, it sounds like the administration and the Treasury Secretary don't feel that this is the best option to put forward, that it may cause problems in the long run, whether there's litigation that were to challenge the administration if they were to make such a move. And there's even some wariness among lawmakers here on Capitol Hill, although you have some progressive Democrats who say, hey, maybe this is the time to test it out if Republicans won't budge on their positions. But I think so long as negotiations are still in progress here in Washington, I think both sides are really trying to work in earnest to hammer out some type of an agreement.
Nikole, the debt ceiling limit is a political crisis. It will require a political solution. And as a result, the comments of former President Donald Trump could have a political impact. What is the effect of his comments last week that he would allow a default? What effect is that having on the negotiations?
So far it doesn't seem to be having much of an impact. Many lawmakers that we spoke to last week kind of brushed off that idea, and most agree that default isn't and shouldn't be an option on the table. That being said, there's still a lot of finger pointing, with Republicans saying that, because they feel the president dragged his feet on negotiations, that, he and Democrats should be to blame if they can't reach an agreement in time. The White House, on the other hand, continues to point the finger back at congressional Republicans, saying, look, just pay the bills and then we can talk about all of these spending cuts and budget cuts that you would like to make. So that being said, again, still unclear where we're going to land on this, other than to say that all sides seem to agree that default is not an option. But the big question still remains, how do they get there before this critical X date in the beginning of June?
All right, Nikole Killion. Nikole, thank you very much.
You bet.